We are now going to have a relatively short panel discussion. I'm going to do this first by introducing each speaker one at a time to come on up. We'll then have our speakers sit at the tables up here, and the panel discussion won't really be a discussion from the panelists out to you. It will be responses to your questions. And we have microphones that are out there in the audience. Please don't get up and try standing in line. We have runners who are going to come by when you raise your hand to give the mic to you to ask questions. So if you do have questions, please think about them now, and in a few minutes we'll be able to entertain them. I'd like to start our panel discussion first by introducing Dr. Brandon Alley. Brandon, if you could come up. Dr. Alley is Assistant Professor of Neurology and the Director of Neuropsychology Research at the Center for Translational Cognitive Neuroscience at the Bedford VA. Dr. Alley is also one of the few people out there who's doing really state-of-the-art scientific work on the relationship between the arts and memory. Brandon? Brandon, as the youngest member of the panel, and starting with an A, he gets to move the tables forward while the others are coming on up. I'd like to introduce a very special woman who many of you aren't aware is in the audience, and that is Meg Curtis. Meg, you have seen in the film the wife, loving wife, and caregiver to Skip Curtis, who was seen throughout the film. Meg is an innkeeper. Believe it or not, that beautiful place that you saw, the sheep and everything else, is this beautiful inn in New Hampshire. Meg, if you could come up, please. Dr. Robert Green. Bob, if you are here. Dr. Green is Professor of Neurology, Genetics, and Epidemiology at BU and co-director of our Alzheimer's Disease Clinical and Research Program, and as you saw, was featured throughout the film. And Berna made mention earlier that was really the beginning discussions of this whole project. Bob? Berna is going to also participate in our panel, so if you have specific questions for her. And last but definitely not least, John Zeisel. John is the president and co-founder of Hearthstone Alzheimer Care, whose assisted living facilities across New York, New England, and elsewhere were featured in this film and really provide the most wonderful state-of-the-art care for individuals with Alzheimer's using all the approaches that we've heard about tonight. John is also the president and co-founder of the I'm Still Here Foundation, and bring the tables forward, and also the author of a really magnificent book called I'm Still Here. There still may be some there in the back afterwards if people are interested. Anyways, if I could have you all take a seat, and I have asked each of our panelists to just prepare one or two sentences explaining why they're here and what their interest is, just to get things going, and then we'll be entertaining questions.
Thank you.
So let's start with Dr. Alley. Brandon, why are you here?
That's a good question, Bob. For the last, 5 or 6 years, my research has been funded by the National Institute on Aging, looking specifically at patients with Alzheimer's disease and their memory for visual information, particularly pictures, and what effect pictures have on long-term and short-term recall. And last year I was actually funded with the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art in New York City to look at the effect of modern art on memory recall for past events and also for learning new information. So hopefully I can contribute tonight.
Meg, you have a lot of family here, friends, supporters. The one person who's not here tonight is Skip. Can you say a few words?
Surely. 14 months ago was when they started filming this documentary that we all saw tonight. And that handsome young man that you saw in the beginning is my husband. And unfortunately, the deterioration process has been such that he's not able to be with us tonight. He's spending the night in a hospice respite center to allow me to be here. The one thing that I also fought that I said would never happen, and it's there, but we will be taking care of him. Now about painting. Just this past fall, against all the wishes of my children, I instructed Skip to go out and try to paint the front of the house. After about half an hour, I went out. He had finished struggling with the ladder, and half a gallon of good Benjamin Moore paint was on the ground, and the other half gallon was on him. So, my kids were right. I shouldn't have pushed him. I shouldn't have asked, but I did, because I can't give up. I can't give in to this disease. And that's why I am so verbal, and especially about early onset, because I see a lot of you out there tonight that appear to be baby boomers, and we are going to be greatly impacted. The other thing that I have recently given into is 2 days a week to adult daycare. I thought that he would think it was babyish or whatever. Turns out, he's the star of the show. They all love him, and yesterday when he got home, the gentleman up the street that transports him back and forth as he goes to work said, "Tell Meg about your day." And he looked at me and he said, "Accolades, accolades." So he thinks he goes to work twice a week. And I said to them, "You better watch out, he's going to ask for a paycheck." So they just sent home a picture. I didn't know Skip was an artist. This is, between the lines, Rudolph that Skip did. And they said, "We didn't know he had artistic talent." I said, "Neither did I." But they said he shaded some of these areas so well. And I didn't know that he had that within him. So here's Rudolph. Skip can paint too.
I know this is a tough act to follow, but Bob, can you give a few words also?
Well, it's a privilege to be part of this film, and it's a privilege to know Berna, who's been so dedicated. And I just want to say, basically put in a plug for what Boston University has been doing and how much support they've given to Alzheimer research. Berna and a number of others have supported us, but the dean, the chair, Neil Cowell, all of the investigators at Boston University work tirelessly and consistently and together, which is quite different than some institutions, as you may know, to produce excellent science and to produce really frontline work in the exploration of the biochemistry of this disorder, in the exploration of the genetics of this disorder. We just published the world's largest completed Alzheimer clinical trial, which was unfortunately negative, but which was an important proof of concept. We have a lot of firsts, as you may have heard already from Bob Stern, and we're going to have a lot more. So I'm very excited you're here, because the work that's going on at BU doesn't often get out to the population. And I would like you to know about it. I would like you to hear about it. And I hope that after tonight you'll ask about it and let us tell you some of the exciting work that's going on there. Thanks.
And Berna, we know your story, but if you could say a few more words.
Well, I was just going to mention a few words about friends, because through this documentary, the friends at Hearthstone, whether it's been Sean Caulfield, who's become a very, very dear friend, or Mallory, who is here. I don't think Carrie is here, or Erica, but I've become friends with so many wonderful people at Hearthstone and also at BU, starting with Bob Green and Bob Stern and Carmela and Ben and everyone else who I'm not mentioning, I'm sorry. But also my dear friend Olivia de Havilland, whom I first met when I went to Paris, which is so many years ago. And I was having lunch with Olivia and some other people a couple of years ago, and I was late for the lunch, and I'm telling you this story because a lot of people ask me this. Why is Olivia narrating? And I said, well, I'm just going to be doing this documentary. And she said, and she heard that my mother had had Alzheimer's, and she said, well, who's going to narrate? And I just like, well, what's going on here? And she said, well, I would like to narrate. And so I didn't tell anyone because she was 91 at the time. And I just thought, well, I better not say anything. And then last summer, I took her up on her offer, which she told us when she introduced the documentary in Paris on December 12th. And she said, I just really wanted to be part of it. And so many of my own friends have been lost to Alzheimer's. I wanted to narrate. So it's to all these friends who have become so important in my life now. Thank you. And Meg, too. It's great. We email each other.
Thank you, Berna. As an Alzheimer's researcher and clinician, I don't often see people after they progress and go into assisted living or nursing homes. And I get this sense that after I'm done seeing them, or trying to treat them, or having them participate in our research, that they're going to just really go downhill too quickly. Well, I had the great honor of visiting one of John Zeisel's Hearthstone facilities and was able to walk around this magnificent place and see the most energy, creativity, and activity that I could ever imagine in a group of people with moderate or worse stage Alzheimer's disease. And so it's really wonderful to be able to have John here and to share his work with all of you. John?
Oof. So the question is that you asked us to answer was why I'm here. Well, first of all, I'd like to tell you, next time you do this alphabetically, I'm going to sit over there.
But you have to put the
because
tables up, though.
and I'll move the tables, but I've got to follow all these people. The reason I'm here is because it's so obvious. It's just, it's sort of like, why do we have to make a point that quality of life, why do we have to make a point that a life worth living is worth having? And the collaboration that's at this table, and I'm on the board of the BU Alzheimer's Center, thanks to Berna, but thanks to Bob and thanks to Bob, it is really important. The fact that we are not making it an either-or question. Should we have this kind of a treatment or should we have that kind of a treatment? Kip's painting, it's as important as the trial that you partook in. The work that you're doing on the study of people's memory and how it relates to visual memory versus verbal memory, we have some research going on as well, is very important. So that the importance of the non-pharmacologic approach of creativity, of understanding how the brain can be affected by being involved with life is so obvious. And I think that what I hope this film does, I'm here because I have hope in the film, is to make that point. That more and more people, I'm amazed that we have 250 people here today, that more and more people will see it and say, well, of course this is what we should be doing. Not, I've never thought of this is amazing, but I knew it all the time. And I hope that you all walk away from here saying, yeah, okay, so what? I better get a few other people to do it. So 250 people get the video, and they give it to 250 people. Very quickly, we will dominate the field of Alzheimer care with them understanding that science, as you were saying, Bob, that research, that art, that creativity can bring a life worth living to people, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, John. When we were putting together this panel, I knew that there would be one problem, and that was going to be frustration, because we'd want to hear from each person for around an hour each, and that in a half an hour or so, there's no way we'd be able to hear enough. Each one of you has questions. Each one of you is afraid to ask a question, but I'd like to invite you to just raise your hand, and we'll have someone come by with the mic if you have a burning question that you'd like to ask any of our panelists. Right here. I told you they'd run, but they can't get the mic out of them.
Hi, my name is Dee Brenner. I am a program coordinator for an Alzheimer's unit in a nursing home on the North Shore. I've known Sean Caulfield for a few years. I bring groups out to the museums through Arts for Alzheimer's. what can I do when I'm faced with, I guess Dr. Butler talked about the shortage of staffing in a nursing home. Extreme frustration when you're dealing with one staff person for 20 residents.
John, could you answer that one?
The answer is that when that person is giving personal care, as stressed out as they are, they can know that Skip can make a painting, or they can talk about a person's life in a creative way. In other words, what we're talking about is a way of being, not a way of saying, well, the one person who has 1 to 20 ratio has to take them to the toilet and do all these things, so they can't deal with creativity. Creativity can be a part of what every single caregiver does, even when they're stressed out. And in fact, it'll make their life better, not only the life of the person.
Another question?
Yes, thank you very much for your information. I'm here because my father is in a probably moderate stage of dementia, and like probably a lot of people here today too. And I saw in December his change in behavior accelerated. Like overnight, I saw a change take place, and now he lives with us, and I have a very extended Italian family that we keep around him, which I think is very important as opposed to being somewhere else. But I'm just scared of watching how this disease, maybe how fast it moves. I don't know how to slow it down. I don't know if I can slow it down. And I don't know, other than his primary care doctor, who might treat him with some type of drug care. But, I mean, what I saw you do in this film today was fantastic. And I find that when I engage him in things like,
That's right.
one night I took out the Italian book on verbs, and we spent an hour and a half from where he was just kind of apathetic. We just I couldn't get him to stop. And it was like what you're showing here, you tap into something. And I think this is what families need, and I feel like I have an innate idea of how to do it, but I still don't know where to go outside of my own home and a doctor. I think I need resources like you folks in the North Shore, which is where I live, to find out if there's programs I can get involved with, or people that come in, this art, just something like that. I think that's what we also need to make your story go further, is get us involved with people like myself, and we become the living examples that you're looking for in our own homes, not just in a facility. You hear what I'm saying?
I think everyone here heard what you said, and it resonated with so many people, and thank you. I'd like to make a plug for the Alzheimer's Association, who is represented here tonight, who helped get our word out to many of you, and who really provides so much wonderful outreach and care and support for the Alzheimer's community out there. And they are a telephone call away for many people. Bob?
Can I make a quick comment on that? One thing to keep in mind, it's strange how we forget this, but it's almost as if when somebody gets Alzheimer's disease, we imagine that they can't get anything else. And in addition to the kind of enrichment and stimulation that we've been talking about, it's important to remember that they can get a cold, a fever, depression, a bellyache, an infection. They can have other sorts of things on top of things. So it's more difficult to diagnose these things often in patients with Alzheimer's disease because they may not be able to describe what's going on as well. But that's what pediatricians have been dealing with, and experienced doctors will look for something that is causing further deterioration. And often we'll find it. So, for example, depression is very common among people with Alzheimer's disease as well. And while you can't reverse the Alzheimer's disease, treatment with antidepressants is often worth a try, and people can see some remarkable improvements in that situation.
I'd like to just take your comment and question a step further and ask Meg to comment. You mentioned very specifically you saw a quick downhill turn, and you're trying to pull the resources together to do something, bring the Italian family together to kind of fill the day with as much quality of life. And I think that's something that Meg has experienced too. I don't know if you had any comments to that.
I say hang in there. Continue to love him the same way you always have. Our house is overflowing with hugs, and with I love yous from everybody in our family. And we also try to engage. We've been told by the doctors not to quiz him about pictures, but we do. We have, our entire kitchen is family pictures and friends' pictures. And we'll go through those pictures and relate to them and tell stories about them. We'll pick up a picture of my father. Who's that? He said, he's a great man. He said, that's your dad. And he's still a practicing pharmacist at 83. He remembers all of those details, yet there are some days he can't remember my name. But do you know what? He still knows that he loves me. And I try to make sure that he knows he loves me every single day. We do more hugging and kissing now than the kids can tell you. They've walked in and said, holy cow, excuse me. Get a room.
Yeah.
But it's very important.
All right, enough. Yeah, we don't run it. Things are moving quickly, but I want to make sure that Dr. Alley gets to talk about that very issue, that we do remember better when we paint, it seems. We do remember better when there's emotion. We do remember better or respond better with emotion. What is that all about?
That's a good question, and I think someone in the movie actually tapped into it, and I think Bob Green has talked about this before, is that the brain in Alzheimer's disease becomes affected differentially. Some parts of the brain are affected much more than others, and a lot of the creative arts and what we've noticed with particularly painting and music is that these types of media are sort of what we consider whole brain processes. You require your entire brain to play music, not just the left hemisphere, not just the right hemisphere, not just the medial temporal lobes. And so it's able to tap into parts of the brain to allow it to work as a whole and to get some information. As a matter of fact, with collaboration with Dr. Stern's brilliant young son, who's only an undergraduate, we did show a study involving novel music in their ability in patients with mild to moderate Alzheimer's ability to learn new verbal information. And that's not just, we've had our fair share of studies showing that they can recall information from 20, 30 years ago, but this is newly learned information. And so we are trying to take this into a new practical sense and get them to sort of perhaps remember medications, medication times, family members' names, family members' voices. And so a lot of this, when this new learning takes place in the arena of using these creative arts, it really allows sort of, I think, compensatory the whole brain to work as a whole rather than trying to rely on one specific area that we usually require to lay down memories. So I think it can be very helpful in that way.
It's beautiful. I feel like I should stop after him bringing up my wonderfully brilliant son. Questions? There's one over there.
It seems like a lot of research focuses on emotion and forming memories. What is the role of the amygdala, which seems to be part of emotion and fear in Alzheimer's as it progresses?
Brandon?
Yeah, so the amygdala is in the healthy individual is very important for laying down memories, and we do tend to remember emotional memories much better than non-emotional memories, particularly negative memories, and that's why when you think about trauma and PTSD and things like that, people almost can't forget some of these memories, and that's because of the amygdala involvement. Amygdala is affected in Alzheimer's disease, and it's affected in different ways, really depending on pathology. But sometimes it can be a process of not being able to inhibit emotion. And sometimes it can be overexertion of emotion, and then sometimes it can be really sort of apathetic. So we do see a wide range of emotion in patients with Alzheimer's disease, ranging from aggressive and constantly upset to very apathetic. And now how that plays a role in memory in Alzheimer's disease, we've done a few studies to show that actually patients do remember, just as healthy individuals do remember emotional memories better than non-emotional memories, particularly negative emotions.
Another question?
There's one down here.
Yes.
My three siblings and I funded an arts program for Alzheimer's patients at the Hebrew Home in Hartford, Connecticut. And it's been several years, and I guess our question all along has been, what should we look for to evaluate whether this program is being effective?
John?
I think that the question of evaluation is the most important question that we face in Alzheimer's today. That we can show you a lovely movie and you can say, well, I saw something. But unless we develop the methods and share those methods for evaluating it, we're in trouble. Because the science that's being done at the BU Alzheimer's Center, for example, has shared methodologies globally in the pharmacological areas, but in the non-pharmacologic areas, we're inventing those as we go along. So I think it's a very good question, but also a much broader question, namely, how can we start to measure the impacts of these elements and know whether what we're doing is just a flash in the pan or emotional because we love our mother or what? So now I'll answer the question. The way I look at it is that what we are trying to do is replace apathy, aggression, agitation, and anxiety with focus of attention, with elevated mood, with memories, and with engagement. So what we need to do, as the man in front of you said when he's talking about bringing out the book of Italian verbs, he was focused for that hour and a half. He was engaged for that hour and a half. The memories came back for those hour and a half, and his mood was elevated. If we can keep that going 24 hours a day, we have a quality of life and we have happy people, and the symptoms go down. We're really not reducing the symptoms, we're replacing them. So what we're working on at Hearthstone and at Artists for Alzheimer's is that methodology. The methodology to measure engagement, observe engagement. Do we do a questionnaire? Do we have observation? In all of our museum programs, we take movie pictures, and then we observe the movie pictures using an engagement scale of observation. So there are methodologies, you're more than welcome to talk to us about it, that we have to use to measure it. It's not only you who want to know, is your money going well because you started a program? It's all of us. You know, are what we're doing effective? And then if we have that, how can we balance, as I said at the end of the movie, the pharmacologic with the non-pharmacologic in a way that we can use all the research and all the experience that everybody on the panel has, but also that the two of you and many other people have. And that's a methodological question. So it's a very good one. And all I can say is engagement, focus of attention, mood, and memory. And those are the things we're trying to measure. Thank you.
You know, with that and the fact that the clock is ticking, I think we're going to have to end in just a couple minutes. And I'd like to, before thanking the panelists and the filmmakers, just want to tell you a little story. And it has to do with hope, because that's what this is all about.
It is.
We've heard that in the movie. We've heard that through so many people's words. It's all about trying to figure out what we can do to make a difference in the lives of people affected by Alzheimer's, both the patients and their families and other caregivers. It's about trying to find new ways to treat it, to slow it down, and ultimately to prevent and cure it. Well, right now, in the year 2010, we are so close to finding new medications that will indeed change the course of the disease. Bob Green was talking about a very large one that he was modest enough to not say that he actually was the national senior scientist on that study. That one didn't work, but there are many others right now in their final stages that look like they're going to. Sometime real soon, we're going to have drugs that are going to change the course of the disease. That's huge hope. But that doesn't mean we're going to change everyone's lives just by coming up with a drug. It doesn't mean that we're going to get rid of the disease. It means we're going to slow it down. We're going to hopefully give people a greater quality of life. Well, the only way to do that is to fill up their lives with what we're seeing tonight by art, the arts, to have a real quality of life. So with hope, I'd just like to introduce one other person tonight. A couple months ago, I received an email from a young man who was 13 years old, who is a 13-year-old sophomore in high school at BU Academy. And he said, I just got this neat award of $2,500 from the Build-A-Bear Foundation as a, quote, hero. And why he got that award was because, in memory of his great-grandmother, he created his own foundation where he's received tons and tons of support from large companies like Kohl's and others to give him puzzles, which he then distributes to nursing homes all around the area. Thousands of puzzles for those residents in the nursing homes to work on. Well, he was given this $2,500 gift, and he wanted to do something more important with that. So he then donated his gift to our work at the BU Alzheimer's Disease Center. So I'd like to just acknowledge hope through Max Wallach. Max, if you could stand. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I want to thank everyone who's had anything to do with making this evening the success that I feel it was. I want to thank our panelists for providing their expertise and insight, and most importantly, Berna Hubner for bringing this film to our world. Thank you, Berna.